Hey everyone, Brayden here, coming to you with a Mickey Views special report on what exactly is going on with the Walt Disney Company right now. I think it's safe to say this year has been just as out of the ordinary as it can get, not just for Disney, but the entire world. And today we're going to be analyzing how 2020 is affecting Disney. We're going to break down Disney's recent layoffs, look into the latest financials on the company, as well as Disney's ongoing battle with the state of California, where recently Disney posted a giant tweet arguing against the state's lockdown measures. Chairman Bob Iger quit the California Economic Task Force outright. So much happening. And to start off, as far as Walt Disney World and what is going on with operations right now, I'd wager the parks right now are well over 50% of their crowd capacity. We don't have any exact numbers or confirmation of this from Disney or anything like that, but being in the parks, it's very clear sometime between August and September, the parks went from every ride being a walk-on, the parks being virtually empty, to the parks feeling quite busy. The issue with the parks right now, in my opinion, are the hours. The hours are very short, 8 or 9 hours a day. That's how long each park is open. The Magic Kingdom, if you remember, it used to operate, some days it would open at 9 a.m., close at 1 a.m. Those were very good hours for the Magic Kingdom when it would happen, but those were 16-hour park days that your one ticket could get you. Now it's operating half as long as that, with 9-hour park days, and the ticket's the same price as before. So you're just getting a whole lot less value, is my point. When Walt Disney World first reopened, the empty parks and the immediate access to the rides, I think it really made it worthwhile to pay the same price as before, even if the hours were shorter, even if the masks were uncomfortable in the Florida climate. The fact that you had instant access to all the rides and it being so empty sort of made up that difference in the value of the ticket. But now when you add the normal park crowds to that mix of things that are all sort of very inconvenient, it makes it to where I would say you may want to consider holding off on booking a trip to see what Disney does. Disney did just update their calendar, adding longer hours to all 4 parks on select days throughout the rest of the year. So you might want to look at that, see what days the hours are different. It varies a lot the rest of the year now. They actually switched it up. Previously, the parks would have the same schedule every day. So that definitely is good news that Disney is making it more variable and adding on some hours to select days. And if we continue to see this return to normalcy with the hours and operationally, we could be in really good shape as far as the parks are concerned. But even with crowds returning right now to the parks and Disney starting to marginally improve the operating hours, park operations, Disney is still seriously slimming down. Late last month, Disney announced that they were laying off 28,000 employees company-wide. Breaking this down, of those 28,000 layoffs, we know roughly 15,000 of them were Walt Disney World employees. A good chunk of that was union cast members, as well as a lot of non-union cast members, including many from Team Disney Orlando, operations people. Disney also laid off workers at the Orlando International Airport, as well as costuming, reservations, and people at Disney Vacation Club. And if you zoom back out to the overall 28,000 layoffs they announced late last month, 2,700 of those we know to be Disneyland layoffs, including 1,800 union workers that were let go. Also in there, we know 411 Imagineers were let go as well. Now, this is where we can get into some analysis, because with these layoffs, this is what Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro said, quote, "In light of the prolonged impact of COVID-19 on our business, including limited capacity due to physical distancing requirements and the continued uncertainty regarding the duration of the pandemic exacerbated in California by the state's unwillingness to lift restrictions that would allow Disneyland to reopen, we have made the very difficult decision to begin the process of reducing our workforce at our parks, experiences, and product segment at all levels," end quote. This statement, in my opinion, it isn't very good. Of course, California should let Disneyland reopen. We're about to get into that, but we just looked at the breakdown of the 28,000 layoffs they were announcing there, and 15,000 of those were Walt Disney World layoffs. Over half of them were Walt Disney World layoffs, and while firing those 15,000 cast members, the public statement given seems to be either passing blame off on the state of California or otherwise trying to progress the California reopening effort by perhaps, trying to put some pressure on the governor, something like that, saying, hey, we're laying people off because of you. California certainly is not helping matters for Disney, but most of the people you fired here aren't coming from Disneyland. They're coming from Walt Disney World, which was allowed to open back in July. So in that way, I thought this was a very very odd statement. Let me know what you guys think. Additionally, if you notice in that statement, Josh says they're, quote, beginning the process of reducing our workforce, which signals to me it's highly likely we'll see even more layoffs. We know there's a big chunk of furloughed employees. Disney even mentions in the statement how they're paying the medical expenses for those furloughed cast members. You have to ask yourself how long before all the people that have remained furloughed but are not yet actually removed from the payroll, when they will, because it's highly likely they will, and it's really a question of when exactly that is going to be. Either way, it's a terrible situation for all of the cast members involved, the cast members themselves. They're the ones most affected by this, so my heart goes out to them. And it should also be noted, less cast members in the parks, it also hurts the guest experience, right? No wonder we have shortened hours. Disney's well on their way towards having half the workforce they did before working at any given time in Walt Disney World. And in the eyes of the investor of the stock market, that's actually a good thing, because it means they're helping their balance sheet, even though this is really in reality to the detriment of the workers that are losing their jobs. It's to the detriment of the quality of the product you're giving to your customers, and it's also bad for the areas you serve. You know, Orlando, think about all the businesses that are downstream from Disney here, apartments, restaurants. It's a really sad thing that's happening here, and I think it was really uncool of Disney to do this and then make it as though the state of California is the one at fault for these layoffs, right? Maybe a small amount of them, a very small amount of them, if at all. I think Disney could afford to keep paying people. And you guys let me know if I'm wrong, but very interestingly, it seems that the current stuff going on in the state of California has had no impact at all on the salaries, on the pay of the executives. So we beat up on Disney for the layoffs. It's definitely not cool what they did here, but now let's take a look at the California situation itself, because this is something where I think we can very much sympathize with Disney's perspective. So Walt Disney World reopened in mid-July here in Florida. The international parks have all reopened. Hong Kong Disneyland has actually reopened twice now, but Disneyland still in October not only hasn't reopened, it doesn't even have a reopening plan. The public explanation for why this is, supposedly it would be unsafe health-wise, according to the state, to let Disneyland reopen, even in a very limited capacity. Disney posted a statement from their chief medical officer saying, quote, "We absolutely reject the suggestion that reopening the Disneyland resort is incompatible with a health-first approach." And then she goes on to talk about how serious they've taken the virus, how getting out of the house and going to the parks, they have all these health measures in place. It would be very safe and highly controlled. And the backstory to all of this is executive chairman and former CEO of the Walt Disney Company, Bob Iger. He was one of the 70 business leaders put on Governor Gavin Newsom's economic reopening task force way back in April. And then this past summer, alongside Walt Disney World reopening, Disney announced Disneyland would be reopening as well. But it turned out they couldn't get approval soon enough to have everything operational, so they ended up calling off the reopening of Disneyland. And from then all the way till now, still to this day, they haven't gotten the all clear from the state. And this continual rejection of Disney's reopening efforts was followed by Bob Iger quitting the task force last week. It's funny because a few weeks ago I made a video about the possibility of Disney ever doing a Disneyland in Texas. Highly unlikely, of course, but this right here just goes to show why having Disneyland in California has become such a problem for Disney. We know Disney will do whatever is required as far as physical distancing, capacity limits, and the like to ensure they can be compliant with the state while getting their cast members back to work and getting back to serving their many local annual pass holders. But this past week, Governor Newsom dropped this statement saying how business leaders want him to reopen stuff, and he says no. We must, quote, let science and data make that determination. Also saying, quote, we feel like there's no hurry putting out the guidelines. If Disneyland slowly reopened following the same CDC guidelines the rest of the country has been using, if that led to any sort of spike in cases, they could always just close Disneyland back down. Disney said they'll follow the health data to the T, and yet still the state says no. So in summary, reopen Disneyland. It really just seems like the state is just being totally unreasonable. I do not envy being in Disney's shoes, having to deal with all of that, but more so my heart goes out to the cast members. They get caught up in the middle of this, not getting paid, while these two massive organizations are battling it out in the media, basically fighting over who cares more, which is just really not a good situation for anyone involved, but especially the cast members. So I did want to say that. Now I want to talk about the financial well-being of the company itself, which is the most pressing and also the most interesting in terms of analysis. First, going through the status of the other arms of the company, the international parks are back open. The cruise line, of course, is still not operating. Disney Plus is performing very well. We've got another season of The Mandalorian starting October 30th, and then each episode will be released subsequently each week after that. That's how the Disney Plus release schedule works. parks. And something that isn't technically part of Disney but accounts for a large portion of their profits year to year, movie theaters are still in bad shape. You might have seen this summer movie theaters tried to do a big physically distance reopening thing, this big event. In the first weekend, the box office was back in large part. Things looked really good. There was definitely some pent-up demand, people that wanted to get back to the movies. But then the second week of movies came, and the third week, and the revenues just kept dropping and dropping to crazy low levels. And I think the movie theaters realized, wow, we are not at all operating in even a similar environment to the one we closed to earlier this year. And that has just been so much the case that Cineworld announced they are temporarily reclosing 127 cinemas in the UK, and the same goes for all 536 Regal theaters they own and operate here in the United States. And they're just the first. AMC is one that's been in the news a lot. They're likely in big trouble. And consider all the smaller movie chains you don't hear about that don't have access to the kind of liquidity and flexibility a giant corporation like Cineworld has at its disposal. They're the ones really in jeopardy of disappearing in large part. It's a really bad situation. And here's the thing with Disney right now. I'm in the parks all the time. I see the crowds returning to the Disney parks. I do think the parks, especially with the tight operating budget Disney's made here, will start to turn a profit sooner rather than later. We'll see the first numbers since the parks reopen next month. We'll see how the parks are doing. Disney will release that quarterly earnings report. And this is not financial advice, but I expect that earnings report showing the first 3 months of the parks being back open to be pretty rough. CEO Bob Chapek and CFO Christine McCarthy on the last earnings call, they said how the demand for Walt Disney World wasn't nearly as high as they expected right out of the gate. And they kept talking about how the parks were making a positive net contribution or, creating cash flows, saying these sort of words that make you think, oh, the parks could be turning a profit, but they never actually specifically said that they're turning a profit yet. And considering all the construction projects Disney's been forced into continuing to invest in because they're too far along to stop, things like the Star Wars Hotel, the Tron coaster, on top of the reduced crowds where it was a ghost town the first 2 months Walt Disney World was back open, I think those things will contribute to the next earnings report not being too good as far as the parks are concerned. It's probably going to be the case that the guest revenues aren't high enough yet for them to be making a profit. But right now, looking at the parks today, like right now and moving forward into future quarters, I'd say Disney is well on their way to getting back in the green as far as Walt Disney World is concerned. So hats off to the CFO on that. The financials, Disney's always been pretty smart doing things that they need to as a company. So there's never been too much of a worry there. So you might be wondering, if the crowds are returning to the parks, Disney's trimming down their expenses, what's the problem? Why is Disney saying they're, quote, beginning the process of reducing our workforce? I think Disney knows the movie side of their business is what's in serious trouble. Disney Plus is doing exceedingly well, but you can't easily forget the billions in profit Disney was getting from these recent Marvel movies and live action remakes via box office sales. The prospect of those billions and billions in profit annually from the box office, which then is funneled back into every aspect of the company, including the investments in the parks, losing that money stream, even if Disney Plus can pick up some of the slack, it's still a huge hit to Disney's core business. The movie theater and Disney, they are like this. They are intertwined. They are what make each other possible. And as the movie theater faces imminent demise, and Disney, meanwhile, is struggling to turn a profit in what is their most consistent profit engine, the Disney parks, it spells major issues for them and necessitates that Disney continues to fire people and continues to cut down on their offerings. They can't reopen Disneyland. The other problem Disney has is they have a good chunk of debt they're servicing right now. They took out lots of big loans this year as a cushion. They also took out a lot of debt to buy 20th Century Fox, something I don't think Disney really needed to do in the first place, that acquisition, but that's definitely done at this point. Disney's market cap currently is $224 billion. And if you combine long-term debt and current debt, Disney is, by my count, somewhere around $68 billion in total debt right now, which means Disney currently has a debt ratio around 0.3, which is on the higher side of a good range if you look at the health of a company. If Disney borrows more to stay afloat and the debt ratio goes to 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, if interest rates go up, these are the sort of things that could happen where then people would start to talk about, will Disney even make it through this storm? Now, we know Disney is run very well financially, and also Disney will likely get more free money from Congress, from bailouts and things like that. And this might go into explaining why everything I've just said. I've just given you a pretty sobering, honest, slightly bearish outlook on the state of the company. My outlook here does not correlate at all to what's been going on with the stock price. Disney's stock is almost up to pre-virus virus levels, as are many other retail stocks. Disney stock has been taking a little bit of a dip lately. I think it's because it's very clear they are in some trouble here, but the reason Disney can report negative 42% revenue growth and still somehow be near pre-lockdown stock prices is in large part thanks to former CEO and executive chairman Bob Iger. And I think there are some external market forces that are propping up the stock price, things like government stimulus, easy money, all that sort of stuff, loans. But in large part, I think the reason Disney stock is so versatile is because of what Bob Iger has done acquiring all these companies over the past 15 years. If it wasn't for that move, Disney would be in way more jeopardy than they currently are, because there would simply be far less implicit value to the company. Disney owning virtually every intellectual property that exists, it makes them such a massive entertainment conglomerate and entertainment powerhouse that they can just not make any movies, be losing money, and still have a high valuation. Because it's not even so much what Disney's doing quarter to quarter, although that is important, it's the fact that they own these brands that make them virtually infallible. They own everything. And I'm not sure if on a societal level or even on a creative level, quite frankly, if that's a good thing, but for the sake of Disney and our continued enjoyment of the Disney parks, this is definitely a positive in terms of how Disney has positioned itself over the past 15 years, and all credit goes to Mr. Iger there. And that, my friends, is the current state of the Walt Disney Company. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it in the future, be sure to subscribe with those notifications on. If you'd like to support these broadcasts and get something for it, check out our Teespring store. We have some awesome merch, link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the show directly, you can also support us on Patreon. There are some different reward levels and stuff, so be sure to check that out as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. From the Mickey V's Magic Studio, this is Brayden. Have a magical day.